Okay, good afternoon everybody. How are you enjoying Dreamforce? Yeah, okay, we're still early. We'll get some cheers out of you by the end of the hour. So first of all, welcome to this afternoon's hands-on training session where we're looking at building dashboards to drive our ROI. I can see many faces from earlier today. You were in my previous session, so thank you very much for returning for more punishments. Okay. The reason why people are returning is because this morning we had a session where we had a look at actually building reports that we could use to analyze our ROI. And this afternoon, we're going to have a look at how we can use those kinds of reports and use them to create a dashboard. It makes the information even easier to access. So for those who haven't been on the earlier session, just to introduce myself very quickly, my name is John Oldham, and I'm a senior instructor for Salesforce. I'm based in London in the UK, and I'm a certified administrator and a certified developer. And helping me out up on the stage today is Chris Piper. Chris Piper is going to be clicking the mouse and typing things in for me, and it means I can walk around and talk, which I can't do more than 2 things at once, so that's enough for me. All right, I try. Safe harbor statement. I imagine you've probably never seen one of these before. Okay. Well, here it is again if you have seen it before. But just essentially, what this boils down to is that this session, over the next hour, it may contain certain future-looking statements about our current product offerings or our future product offerings, which may not turn out to be true. So essentially, please do not base any of your buying decisions on features that that are referred to in these future-looking statements. Base them solely on what is currently available in Salesforce right now in your particular edition of Salesforce. If you want to read the legalese in more detail, it's available on our website. It's also available in the slide deck that you were given when you entered the room. On the subject of the slide deck, I've just been asked by the people at the door, could you make sure you take all of your slide decks with you? Because obviously we've got quite a short turnaround between the end of this session and the beginning of the next session. It'll be very much appreciated. Okay. As this is a hands-on training session, the idea is that you will be following along with me with the exercises. I say you, those of you who have got here early and grabbed yourself a PC. Okay. So for those of you who are sat in front of a PC, let's get you logged on first of all. Now, some of you may find that Salesforce is currently open. Could I just ask you, just as a precaution, could everybody close down any browser that is currently open, just to make sure that we've all logged out of the previous session that we had? And on your desktop, you'll find that you can choose from Internet Explorer or Firefox, whichever browser you prefer. So open up one of those browsers, Internet Explorer or Firefox, and you should automatically be taken to the login page for Salesforce. Now, your username today is admin@df09 dashboards ROI, followed by a 3-digit number. That 3-digit number you will find stuck to the corner of your monitor, of your screen. So, for example, if on your monitor you have the digit 010, your username this afternoon will be admin@df09 dashboards ROI 010.com. Nice and easy to remember. Okay? So try typing that into the username field, and your password this afternoon is password1. That's password lowercase and the number 1 as opposed to the word 1. If anybody has any trouble logging in, please do raise your hand and one of our helpers will come and assist you to get logged in. But we didn't have too many problems earlier today. There's a hand at the back I can see. If I don't see any other hands, I'll assume that everybody's logged in. You should be looking at your home page. So I'll just give people a few seconds to get safely logged in, and then we'll move on. Okay. So that's a very good start, isn't it, Chris? Okay, no more hands? Everyone's in? Excellent. Okay. So, why are we here this afternoon, and what are we going to be covering over the next 40 minutes or so? Well, really, this session is all about how we can build a dashboard to measure and to drive our ROI. So we're going to have a chat this afternoon. It's been a long day already. We're going to have a chat this afternoon, first of all, about what exactly is a dashboard and why you might want to use one. We'll also talk about what you'll need to build a dashboard, a few ingredients, if you like, what you need to have ready before you go and build one. And we'll also talk about the steps that you need to follow. There aren't many steps, not particularly complicated, but we'll talk about them. Once we've done that, we're going to have a look at a couple of exercises. The first exercise, we're going to actually build our dashboard from start to finish. And in the second example, we'll have a look at how we can take a downloaded dashboard, and we'll talk about where you can download additional dashboards, and we'll have a look at how we can make modifications to an existing dashboard as opposed to creating a brand new dashboard from scratch, which is what we're going to do in exercise 1. And after that, we'll have a chat about tips and best practices. So I want to sort of give you the benefit of my knowledge and experience with dashboards to kind of just put across a few tips and things that make life easier for you when you're building your own dashboards. And then at the very end, we'll open up the floor for Q&A. Could I just ask that if you do have any questions during the actual exercises in the session itself, please be patient, hang on to those questions, and I will get round to those at the end of the session, if that's okay. All right. Right, so first question is, what is a dashboard and why should you use one? Well, I always think of a dashboard as like a newspaper with all the articles taken out. All the stories, all the text, all taken out, leaving you with just the pictures and the headlines. Now, you could look at a newspaper like that, pictures and headlines. In fact, a lot of people do look at newspapers like that. And you could get a pretty good idea of what's happening in the world just from looking at those pictures and those headlines. Dashboard is very similar. Think of it as the headlines and the pictures of your data. Okay? No detail in there. If you want detail, you can click into the dashboard and see the detail underneath. But the idea is it's designed to give you a lot of information at a glance. Rather than you having to go in and run maybe half a dozen reports each morning, all of those reports can be available to you in summarized form on a dashboard. So essentially it summarizes our data either graphically in the form of tables, gauges, metrics, all of these things we're going to have a look at in a little bit more detail. Each one of these things that you can see in our example on the screen here is called a component. And a dashboard can have up to 20 of these components. Now, a couple of other advantages of dashboards is a dashboard is not restricted to the viewer's security settings. So, for example, if I'm a marketing rep, we could have a dashboard built for us that will allow me to see all of the data for the whole marketing team, the kind of data that normally only the VP of marketing would be able to see. So we can set up a dashboard to give a team view, which is very difficult to do with a report. And also, as we'll see, dashboards can be emailed to ourselves or to other people as well. So all of these things we'll have a look at over the next 45 minutes or so. Okay, what will you need to build a dashboard? You'll need permission, not my permission, but the permission is a particular right that you have within Salesforce. If you're an administrator of Salesforce, you will automatically have this permission. If you're not, it will be a permission that will have been granted to you by your administrator. In a moment, or in a little while, I will show you how you can easily find out whether or not you have the necessary permission. Okay. Secondly, you'll need source reports, which is why we had a session earlier today where we were actually creating reports. So source report is basically what's generating the data that's feeding the dashboard display. So you'll need to have source reports. We'll look at that in more detail in just a minute. You'll need a folder to store your dashboard. As you know, when you save a report, it needs a folder. When you save a dashboard, it needs a folder as well. And finally, you'll need something or someone called a running user. More about that in just a second. But let's have a look at the source reports first of all. Now, what you have to remember is that the dashboard or the components of the dashboard do not actually summarize the data for you and display it in a summarized form. The data must already be summarized in the source report that you're using. So let's have a look at an example here, what we mean by summarized. Here is a report that's allowing us to see opportunities organized according to the campaigns that they relate to. So we've got advertisement LA Times, that's a campaign with one opportunity below it. We've got Big Huge Conference, now that's a name for a campaign, where we've got a couple of associated opportunities. Now, as you can see here, let's take Big Huge Conference as an example. Every time you have grouping on a report like this, at the top of the group, this is Big Huge Conference being the group, you have what we call a summary row, which contains all the aggregated or summarized information for that particular group on the report. So in this example, Big Huge Conference, it tells us that there are 2 associated opportunities with a combined value of 180,000 US dollars. And it's that summarized information that goes into the components of the table. So each summary row could make up a table or a row in a table component on your dashboard. Or each summary row could be one of the columns in your column bar chart, or your column chart, whatever you happen to call it. Now, so those are tables and charts, but there are other kinds of components that we can have on a dashboard. We also have something called a gauge and a metric. Now, these 2 components take the bottom total, from the very bottom of the report, your grand total, in other words. In the case of a gauge, it displays it in the form of a range. It tells you where you are within that particular range. Very useful for seeing where you are now and where you want to be and where you don't want to be. Very useful for gap analysis, that kind of thing. And a metric takes exactly the same figure from the bottom of the report, but it just displays it as a single figure. Because sometimes all you want to see is a total of something. You don't want to have to get distracted by graphics, etc. So sometimes that's all you need. So that's a metric as well. So we're going to have a look when we build our dashboard this afternoon at each of these different component types when we're building it. But just to give you an overview of the importance of you already having a summary report in the correct format already. Okay. Now the running user. Now have a look at this example. Here is a typical small marketing team. We've got Kathy, the boss, the manager, with a couple of marketing reps, Phil and Matt. Now when we build this dashboard, what we can do is tell the system that Kathy is going to be the running user. And all the data displayed on that dashboard will be from Kathy's perspective, enabling Phil and Matt to see what Kathy can see. In other words, we've just built a team dashboard. At the report level, it doesn't work like that. Reports only show information that that person would normally be able to see. But we can get around that by specifying a running user of somewhere high up in the department, such as Kathy in this particular example. So that's essentially what a running user is all about. Right. Steps to creating a dashboard. So we know what it is. We know what we need. Next thing, what are the steps that we need to go through? Now, there are 4 steps, 2 of which are optional. So basically, there are 2 required steps. Feeling a bit reassured now if you've never built a dashboard before. The first step is actually to go in and create the dashboard and provide all the settings information. We need to give it a name, describe it optionally. We can specify that running user that we talked about and the folder in which we want to save it. And we can also, if we're artistically inclined, decide what colors are going to be used by any chart components that we have on our dashboard. So look and feel can also be set up at that stage. Once you've done that, the second step is simply to go in and add your individual components, your charts, your graphs, your metrics, etc., etc. Optionally, you can schedule the dashboard to be refreshed automatically. We'll talk more about refreshing when we get there, but at the same time, we can have a dashboard emailed to ourselves or to somebody, maybe the VP of marketing, that kind of thing. And finally, you yourselves or maybe one of your colleagues will very often identify a favorite dashboard, something that they always go to the first time they log into Salesforce each morning. Now, to make it easier to get to that favorite dashboard, we can actually have a look at how we can add dashboards to people's home pages. So it's the first thing, one of the first things the user sees whenever they log into the system. So it's an optional step, but we've got time. We'll have a look at covering that as well. Okay, so let's have a look at exercise 1, our first example. And just to let you know, I won't forget to do it. The exercises that we're doing today are all included in the exercise guide. I don't think you'll need the exercise guide if you're actually in front of the PC, because you'll have enough to do actually following along with Chris and me. Okay, but that's there for you to take away and maybe practice this kind of thing at a later date, but it's there if you need it. Okay, so the first example is this. We are going to create a dashboard that allows our marketing team to get an overview of the following information. They would like to be able to see campaign revenue information. For those of you who were here on the earlier session, we actually had a look at creating a campaign revenue report. So they want to see campaign revenue information. They want to see leads generation information. How many leads are we generating? What's the best source of our leads? Is advertising generating more leads? Is telemarketing generating more leads? We want that kind of information on the dashboard as well. And we also want marketing spend optimization. This is a bit of a funny one. But this essentially, here we're talking about ROI. For every dollar, I nearly said pound then, I do apologize. For every dollar that we spend on a campaign, we want to know how much revenue it's making us. So the return on our investment. Are we optimizing our marketing spend as effectively as we can? So we're going to divide the dashboard up into 3 areas. We're going to have a revenue area, we're going to have a lead generation area, and we're going to have a marketing spend area. And we're going to have 1 or 2 dashboard components in each one of these areas. So the task ahead of us now, we're going to create the dashboard, we're going to add the required components, and we're going to optionally schedule a refresh of the dashboard and an emailing of the dashboard. And finally, we'll have a look at how we can add that dashboard to our homepage as well. Are you ready? Are you up for it, as we say? Okay, in England. Right, so make sure you're in your browser. You're all logged in already, so that's fine. So go back into your browser. I think you're already there anyway. And we want to create a new dashboard. Can anyone hazard a guess as to which tab we need to click on to view or create dashboards? There you go, that's your first tough question. Dashboards, I hear? Yep, okay. Yep, if you click on the Dashboards tab, the first thing you see on the Dashboards tab, strangely, is a dashboard. Okay, that's assuming that you've got any. Now, Think of the dashboard tab itself as the showroom. This is the area where you see finished, completed dashboards that are ready for people and yourself and other people to see. Okay? And if you want to see other dashboards, Chris is just pointing it out to you now, you can see there's a view dashboard area. You click into that and you would see other dashboards that are available to you. And you can see we better get busy because there aren't that many. Okay? So we're not actually going to have a look at this existing one. Remember, we're here to create a new one. So if you have a look at the top left-hand corner, before you click on it, is a go to dashboard list. And essentially what that does, that takes us behind the showroom into the workshop where we can create new dashboards or edit existing dashboards. Now, I know you should all be able to see that today on these PCs because you're all logged in as administrators. But if that's missing, that's what I was talking about earlier on. If that link is not there, it means you don't have the necessary permission to create and edit dashboards. And if you need that permission, that's where you need to go and find your system administrator, your Salesforce administrator, and ask for that permission if you're friends with them. Okay, maybe buy them a drink or something. Okay, but we've got that now, okay, or whatever works for you. Okay, if you click on that link now, like I say, it takes us back behind the scenes into the workshop, and what you'd see here would be a list of dashboards available to you. And again, you'll see there's a list of folders at the top. As we'll see, our dashboards are organized into folders. So there's not really a great deal in there at the moment, just a company performance dashboard. But no prizes for guessing. We're going to create a new dashboard by clicking on the New Dashboard button. Okay, so just at the top of the list, Chris is pointing at you now, click on New Dashboard. So as I said, this first step is really where we give the system a bit more background as to what this dashboard is all about, giving it a name and so on. So let's call it the Marketing Dashboard. In the title field, type in Marketing Dashboard. And there's that sound again of 100 people typing. It's a great sound. The unique name you can ignore because the system will fill that in automatically for you. Your description is optional, but it's always good practice to type in a brief description because you might over time create many dashboards. A description is usually a little less vague than a simple two-word title. So we'll go with Chris's offering here, how are my campaigns performing? I like to describe reports and dashboards in the form of the questions that they answer. That's just my tick. The dashboard layout style, you can have a dashboard of 2 columns or 3 columns. I recommend going for 3 columns. However, if you know that your dashboard is going to contain lots of horizontal bar charts which eat into your your lateral or horizontal space, then you might find 2 columns give those components more room to breathe. But we're going to go for 3 columns. Security settings section now, there's that running user that we talked about. So when a user is viewing this dashboard, whose data do we want to see? Just their own, or do we want to see the VP of Marketing's data? So in other words, a team view. So what we're going to do, we're going to type in there, I've forgotten her name now. Kathy Cooper, thank you very much. Okay, Kathy Cooper. Kathy Cooper is our running user. Yeah, she was on our slide earlier on. And the folder that we're going to save it into, you could save it into My Personal Dashboards. Why might that not be a good idea? Exactly. It's personal to you. If that's what you want. If you want to be selfish, then fine. Okay. But I recommend we put it into a folder that we know is public. So there's actually one that we've created already. It's called Marketing Dashboards. Let's save it into that folder. Now, the chart settings, this is pure cosmetics. You don't need to know this, but I like the look of you. So let's have a quick chat about this. Any chart that you have on the dashboard, so that's a bar chart, a line chart, that kind of thing, you can give it a look and feel. But rather than having to give each chart, because you can have 20 of them, each one an individual color scheme, you can set up a default color scheme here, which will be applied to every chart component that you add to the dashboard. So you can change the title color, the size of the title, the size of any other, or the color of any other text on there. But what I'm going to ask you to do, you can also have a background fade. This allows you to choose a starting color and an ending color, and the system will fade from the start color to the end color, giving you a nice kind of reflective pattern. Now, don't get too carried away with this. Bold colors don't look too good, okay? But if you click on the little palette button just at the end of the starting color field, I recommend, let's choose maybe a starting color from the top row. Go for anything that you like. I'm not going to be, dictate what you have to select here. In the ending color, and go for what color you want that to fade into. So again, I recommend choosing a color from towards the top, a nice kind of gentle pale color. So, yeah, that sounds good enough, that purple colour. But, again, go with whichever colour you like. It was purple, wasn't it? Okay, so just a quick recap. Before we click Save, we've named it and described it. We've specified the layout, 2 or 3 columns, the running user and the folder. And we've also done a little bit of optional kind of setting the colours, etc. So if you click on Save now, top or bottom of that screen, What you should now be looking at is an empty dashboard. Think of this as your canvas. Okay, big sheet of paper, and we're about to go in now and stick our individual components to this canvas, if you like. Notice how it's organized into 3 columns, and in each column at the top you can see you've got an Add Component link. And it's simply that button that we're going to click on several occasions to add individual components to our columns. So let's go for the first column, and before Chris clicks on Add Component, what I plan to do is this. There are 3 distinct requirements for this dashboard. It's revenue, it's leads, and it's marketing spend optimization. So if you know that you're going to have similar components, it's always a good idea to group them together in the same column. So it makes it look a lot neater. So think about the order, because it is important. If you start just throwing dashboard components onto the dashboard in no particular order, it's going to be more difficult to interpret at a later date. So I'm going to reserve the first column for our campaign revenue component. So click on Add Component now, and it opens up the dashboard component edit screen. We'll take our time with this one, because for many of you this might be the first time you've seen this screen, but once we come onto it again in a few minutes, we can go through it more quickly. So we'll spend some time on it now. So the first one we're going to go for a table. So select Table. This allows you to decide what type of component you want. And the header is what's going to appear just above this particular component. So let's call this, or let's type in a header there of campaign revenue. Okay. Now, here's a little trick. Because I intend to have a second component in this first column, which is kind of similar to this first component, I'm not going to put a footer in there, because a footer will separate them. I'm going to save it until I get to the last component in this column and have a footer at the end. So a header above the first one, a footer below the last one. It nicely seals off that particular part of the dashboard. Okay? So a little trick, you don't have to do that. Normally, footer information is kind of background information. Where's the data come from? What date range has been used for that report, that kind of thing. The title we will have, let's call this Top 3 Campaigns. Now, the display units, this is completely up to you, but if you know that you've got big figures that are going to appear on this table, like $10 million, do you want that displayed as 10 followed by 6 zeros, or would you like it displayed as 10 followed by the word million, or somewhere in there, million? Now, if you have a look at the options there, you can say, give me in millions, give me in thousands, give me whole units, as the case may be. Or you could just let the system do it by selecting auto. Okay? So what I propose we do, with campaign revenue, let's leave it on auto. And we can always come back and change this afterwards if we don't like the result. Now, the drill down to and the drill down URL, as I mentioned earlier on, when a user is looking at a dashboard, they can click on this particular component and it will take them down to the underlying source report, so that they can see the full data. It's a bit like us with our newspaper, which doesn't contain any articles, having a separate paper that has all the articles in them that we can just go and have a look at if we want more detail. Okay? So we're going to leave the system to do that for us. Step 2 is the actual source report itself. So if you click into that, you'll see that we have a number of reports available to us organized into folders. Now, the ones that we want, we've organized into a folder called Marketing Dashboard Reports. For those of you who are here in the earlier session, you'll recognize the one that Chris has just selected. It's Campaign Revenue FY09. I think I called it CY09 earlier today. So that's the one that we want. Just to give you a bit of background on this report, it's simply a list of opportunities that have been organized according to campaign. So it's a summarized report. Now, table settings, sort by. At the moment, the default there is label ascending. That means we'll have in our table, we'll have our top 3 campaigns in alphabetical order. Useful? Well, if it's a top 3 component, not particularly useful. Much better to go for value. We want to kind of rate them according to the amount of revenue. Ascending or descending? If you go for ascending, we're going to get the lowest first. If we want the top 3, so think of a leaderboard. Yeah? If you go for descending, you're essentially getting a leaderboard. Okay? So we'll go for row value descending. Now, maximum values displayed, unless you want every single campaign on that table, you might want to put a number in there. If it's the top 5, put 5 in there. Top 10, put 10 in there. Ours is just going to be a top 3. We just want to see the top 3 highest performing campaigns. So type the number 3 in there. Step 4 is optional. I've already let you play around with the colors, so I'm not going to allow you to do that again. Not just yet anyway. But what we could do, we could have certain values in that table highlighted in a particular color, depending on where they fall within the range that we can specify in here. Okay? But we'll leave that until later on. So if you're ready with that, we've just kind of selected our component type. We've given it header, footer details. We've selected the source report and the order. And we'll just click on Save, top or bottom. And the nice thing about this is we get to see the components straight away. If you click on Save now, it's straight back to the dashboard itself. You should now be looking at a campaign revenue component. Notice the order. in descending order of value. So we've got the top one at the top there. If for any reason you don't like what you're seeing here, there's an edit link at the top. Don't click on it now, but that just takes you back to the previous screen, allowing you to maybe change the units, change the source report if there's something you're not happy with. Okay, success? Yeah, good stuff. Right, so what we're going to do, and the nice thing about dashboards is this. We can actually use the same source report again and again and again, but just display the data using different types of components, giving us different perspectives, different views on our data. So what I thought we might do here is, using the same campaign revenue report, let's put on a gauge. And the nice thing about a gauge is we can actually specify where we want to be, and the needle in the gauge will point to where we are. We can measure how far away we are. So I'm sure you all have quotas, targets that you need to meet, that kind of thing. So that's typically where a gauge comes in, allows us to set what our target is and see how far we are away from that target. Let's just do it, because it's a lot easier to explain when we've got it on screen. So again, same column, click on the same add component link at the top there. And same as before, but this time we're going to go for the gauge option. So select gauge at the top. And are we going to go for a header? Now remember the little trick. If we don't have a header, this is the second one. It means that the two will nicely kind of cordoned off on our dashboard. But we will have a footer. As I mentioned, footer information is usually reserved for a bit of background as to where the data came from. So Chris is just typing in here, figures based on value of 1 opportunities. Okay, so we're measuring our campaigns according to the value of 1 opportunities that they're generating. The title in here, let's call it, again, the same title we used before, total campaign revenue. And everything else in step 1 is as described earlier on, so I won't waste time by going through that again. Step 2, again, we're going to select exactly the same source report, which, just to remind you, is in the Marketing Dashboard Reports folder, and it's Campaign ROI by type. And being a gauge, the color options now become not optional, but we need to put some options in here. Otherwise, the system won't know what the ranges are. So, sorry, yeah, just to remind you, Campaign Revenue FY09, sorry if you missed that, is the same source report as before. Everybody got that? Okay, excellent. Right, so the gauge settings now, this is where we set the minimum and maximum value. So what value do we want on empty, if you think of it as a fuel gauge, and on full? So let's say where we don't want to be is 0 revenue. So let's put a 0 in there. And I always jump ahead to the maximum value first. And in the maximum value, I want to say, well, we want to go for 1 million. Now, a nice abbreviation here, I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. We can use M for million, B for billion, K for 1,000. It automatically fills in the zeros for you. We haven't got as far as T for trillion yet, but and because inflation's not that bad, but we might need it. Okay, and then we can actually specify where we want the colors in our gauge to change. So these are what we call the breakpoints. So at what value do we change from red to amber to green and so on? So we're just going to kind of break it into thirds. 330K is the first breakpoint value. 660,000 is the second breakpoint value. So try and keep it all nice and proportioned. Okay, by going for thirds or something like that. The nice thing is, again, we can pop back in. If we don't like the look of the gauge or the colors, we can pop back in at any time and change them. You've also got the option down here to show the total. What this would do, if you just want to have it pointing to a range, that's fine, but you can also have it showing you the actual total as well, which is pulled from the bottom of the report. And you can have that each area shown as a percentage of where you are and where you want to be. So I'm 60% of the way towards my targets, that kind of thing. But we'll just have the show total at this stage. If you click on Save now, again, straight away, we get instant feedback here. We can see our beautiful gauge. Okay? And you can see 1 in millions is where we want to be, and we're currently at 0.66, which in millions is 660,000 approximately. And there's our footer. So can you see how just having a header at the top and a footer at the bottom nicely separates that out from the rest of the information we have on our dashboard. The colors can be changed as well, because you might find, well, a high figure is bad. It could be closed opportunities. We don't want that. So you probably noticed when we were creating that, you had a little color palette that you could use to change the colors of the different segments of the gauge. So far, so good? Okay. So that's our campaign revenue. So at the moment, it's telling me what campaigns are doing well. And also it's allowing me to see how far we are from our quota or our targets. But that's only half of our marketing story, isn't it? What about leads? What kind of leads are we generating? So we're going to go into the second column now and have a look at including some lead information. So a slightly different source report. But it's the same procedure as far as the functionality goes. Second column, click on Add Component. and we get the very same component edit screen as before, but on this occasion we are going to go for a chart, which is the default anyway. And the header, because this is the first one in the column, let's call this lead generation. Or let's header it with lead generation. Okay, and the footer will leave until we have the final component in there. And the title, let's call this leads by lead source. Okay, this is a kind of nod to the source report that we're going to be using, which I'll talk about in a second. Everything else on step 1, leave as it is. The source report, let's have a look. And again, if you click into that field, in the Marketing Dashboard Reports folder, there's a report there called Leads by Lead Source. And I'll quickly explain what this report is all about. It's essentially a list of leads that have been grouped together according to the source that generated them. Advertising, telemarketing, email, blasts, that kind of thing. So, as we said before, it's already got the grouping built into the report, and the dashboard is just extracting that grouping and showing it in a particular format, in this case, a chart. So, step 3, because it's a chart that we've selected, we're now asked to choose the chart type. Now, a new feature in Salesforce is this ability to use any chart that may already have been created at the report level. So when you created the report, maybe you created a chart at the same time. To save you having to create that chart all over again, just tell the system, oh, use the chart on the report. If you want a completely different chart, don't use it. So the chart that we're going to go for, and if you're not familiar with the different types, Chris has just shown you there's a little link there called View Chart Types, which gives you all the options. If you hover over one of them, it allows you to see its name of one of the chart types. Okay. So if you just hover over one of those chart types that you've got in the little pop-up, Chris. Okay, all right, we won't. He's not listening to me today. Okay, anyway, so we had a fight earlier on. It wasn't pretty. Okay. Right, so what we're going to go for, we could go for a pie chart, okay? But I'm going to go for a donut because it's new and it's got a hole in the middle. And I like that because one of the problems with the traditional pie chart is that you never see the total on it anywhere. But now there's a hole in the donut, you can stick the total in there, which makes it quite nice. But before as we select that, donut or pie charts, as I'm sure you're aware, are very good for comparing shares. Okay, so we can see what share of our overall leads is advertising contributing to, what share is telemarketing contributing to. So it allows us to compare shares of a total, if you like. So let's go for donut because it's new and we can have a look at it. And again, you've got things like sort by. This will just determine in what order around the donut will your different sources appear. Okay, there's lots of talk about food here, isn't there? I'm getting hungry. Sauce and donuts and things. Okay, so we'll leave the default as row label ascending. So essentially they'll be around the donut in alphabetical order. We're going to go for all values display. We're not going to impose a minimum or a maximum on there. And the legend position, the legend is what tells you what each wedge of the pie or the donut represents. Now, I like to put it at the bottom or underneath the chart. The reason being is that it can encroach into the space if you have it on the side. So I like to have it at the bottom. Axis range doesn't really apply to a pie chart, but what we can do if it was a line chart or a column chart, we could actually set the minimum and maximum of our axes if necessary. And just down at the bottom here, and again, this is new to the engine that we have here. These are all things that we can now do with this new chart type, which is the donut. So as I mentioned, if you select Show Total there, that means you'll have the total appearing in the middle of the actual donut itself. So let's just click on Save now. But again, the same procedure. The only thing that's different is we've selected a different type. And there you can see our lovely leads by lead source donut. Notice in the middle we've got 2 there, and at the bottom we've got our legends, which are telling us the blue, advertising. Well, I think we already knew that, didn't we? Advertising by far and away is contributing the most to our lead generation compared to all the others. Now, if you wanted to, notice that you might want to see the actual figures around the side of the donut. So let's have a look at putting that on there now. If you find the edit link just in the top right corner of the donut, no, sorry, let's go back again. Yeah, the edit link. Okay, just in here, if you scroll down towards the bottom, you can see, if you select Show Percentage, Show Values, those allow you to see actual information superimposed onto the top of the donut, rather than you having to kind of click through to see the underlying source report. So if that's more to your liking, we can go with that. Okay. Right, so what we'll do, lead generation, we're going to put one more component into the lead generation column, and we're going to do a metric on this occasion. Metric, as I mentioned earlier on, is simply the figure from the bottom of a report taken out and put into a little box on your dashboard. Now, metrics are good when you have tables or column charts or bar charts, because tables and charts do not show a total. But what you can do is you can have a chart there, a column chart, a bar chart, a line chart, or a table, and from the same report you can add a metric component underneath, and it will essentially give you the total for the data on that particular component. The nice thing about the donut is it's got space in the middle for that total. The old style pie chart, we didn't have that. We used to have to add a metric at the bottom. So if that is a situation, let's quickly have an example of doing that, or go through an example of doing that. Click on Add Component again in the second column, and what we're going to do, we're going to add another component here. So this time let's go for a metric. And we're not going to go for the header. Let's go for the footer, because this is going to be the second one. And in the footer here, let's call this is based on leads generated this year. Okay, so remember, footer information gives the viewer more information about the source of the data. So leads generated this year. And the title field you'll see is unavailable because metrics don't have titles, they have labels instead, which we'll come to in a second. The source report is going to be the same source report that we used before, which is leads by lead source. So select that, and the metric label, let's call this total leads generated this year. Okay, so what text do you want to introduce this single figure? Okay, and as before, you can have this particular value highlighted in a certain color depending on where it falls within a range, but I'll leave that for you to do in your own time. Click on Save now. And let's have a look at what we've got. So there is our metric 2K, which, as you can see, corresponds to the grand total that we're now able to have in our new chart type of donuts. Okay, but a useful trick to get around the issue that charts, tables do not inherently have their own totals in there. And again, just a single header and a single footer, nicely sort of locking those into a particular segment of our dashboard. Okay, that's 4 down, just in not very long. So let's have a look at a final example. And let's go to the final column, and this column we're going to reserve for marketing spend optimization information. Okay, we've seen how much revenue our campaigns are generating. We've seen what particular sources or campaigns are generating the most lead, but we have no comparison at the moment as to how expensive our campaigns are and how much they're generating. In other words, we want a comparison of what a campaign costs us against what it's actually generating for us. The difference between those is basically our ROI. For each dollar that we spend on a campaign, how much are we actually getting back? Earlier today, for those of you who were here, we actually created an ROI report by campaign type, by advertising, by telemarketing, and we're going to use that report here. So click on Add a Component one last time, and in here, let's select Chart, or it's already selected for us, and the header, let's call this Marketing Spend Optimization. Sorry to make you type, but I love the sound. Marketing Spend Optimization. Doesn't it have an S in it? Okay, I'll let you off. Okay, and the footer, we'll put figures based on closed-won opportunities in the footer. Okay, so just giving a bit of background to the data. Okay, and the title, let's call this Marketing Spend Optimization again. Copied and pasted that one. And everything in step 1, everything else we'll leave as it is. Step 2, the actual source reports. Let's go for, again from the Marketing Dashboard Reports folder, there's one there called Campaign ROI by Type, which, as I mentioned earlier on, is our campaigns or opportunities per campaign organized by type. Okay, now, chart settings as before, let's go for, or leave it as a vertical column. This means each one of our campaign types, advertising, telemarketing, etc., will appear as its own unique column. So we'll go for vertical column, and sort by, we'll go with the label unless you want them going from, the lowest value type to the highest value type. Let's leave it as a row value ascending. And the only other thing I'm going to ask you to do, let's leave everything else as it is. Okay. And let's click on, show values. What this will mean, rather than you having to read off what the total is for a particular column from the axis on the side, you will actually see it printed on there. Another new feature, and I think you probably saw this in the keynote, as part of the keynote, you have the ability to hover over a particular column and it will pop up with further information as well. So I think let's switch that on as well, because that's quite a nice feature too. Click on Save. and, oh, we've asked it to do something difficult now, it's thinking about it. There we go. And there is our final column, our marketing spend optimization. Again, confirming something we already knew. Advertisement, advertising or campaigns are by far and away kind of outperforming all of our other campaign types. So 7.76, very similar figure to the one that we saw earlier today, for those of you who are here. That essentially, 7.76, yeah, that I think is in thousands. So that's essentially saying that for every dollar that I'm spending on advertising, I'm making about $77 in return, which is not bad. It's not bad return at all. Okay, a couple of other things before we wrap this up. You should now be looking at a pretty, already a useful dashboard. Now, we've only got 5 components on here, but remember you can go up to, how many? Up to 20 if you want to. I'm going to say that's not a good idea in a minute, but wait for that one. I'll come back to that. But one thing you have to remember about dashboards is that if I'm a user and I'm looking at a dashboard in the morning, I could come back to that dashboard in the afternoon, and the figures may very well be exactly the same, even though lots of data entry has been done during that time. That's because dashboards do not automatically get refreshed. Users can refresh them themselves, but the system doesn't automatically refresh them because that can sometimes be time-consuming if it's made up of lots of big source reports. So what we can do, we can actually schedule an automatic refresh. We can say, well, okay, every time each day we'll have it refreshed automatically so that users always have the most up-to-date dashboard in front of them. And at the same time, we can schedule the emailing of the dashboard as well. So let's have a quick look at how we can do this. If you click on the little arrow button, sorry, Chris, could you just go back a screen? Yeah. There's a little arrow button next to the refresh button at the top. And if you click on that, you get 2 further options, one of which is schedule refresh. If you click into that, you can see here, this is the refresh screen. Now, the running user is Kathy Cooper. We can't change that. That's just a reminder. And we can have it emailed to us, but let's also, if you click in 2 others as well, that allows us to email other people. So in here, you can see there's a search drop-down. If you click into the search drop-down, let's select roles and subordinates, and I'll show you where we're going with this. Here is a list of all the roles that we have set up in Salesforce, one of which is VP of Marketing, which is Kathy Cooper. If you select VP of Marketing there and click Add, as Chris has done, to add it to the list across, basically we're telling the system to email this dashboard on the time that we specify to the VP of Marketing plus all of her subordinates. So essentially her team, all of her managers, directors below her, and her reps below her as well. So a whole family, a whole team of people can be emailed in one go. Next, schedule the refresh. Let's go for weekly. And you'll see it defaults to today, which is Wednesday. We'll leave that as it is. And the start date and end date, let's leave those as they are. We can specify, okay, for the next month, for the next 3 months, this dashboard is going to be emailed out every Wednesday to these people. One final thing, preferred start time. If you click on the Find Available Options there, pick a start time. Let's go for 4 o'clock this afternoon. One thing I will add about this is that if you schedule the email for 4 o'clock, it may be up to 29 minutes later that the person receives it. That's because it joins a queue and has to be processed like lots of other emails in Salesforce. So if somebody really needs it for 4 o'clock, maybe think about scheduling it the hour before, 1 hour before, just to give you a heads up on that one. Click on Save now. That dashboard has now been scheduled for refresh. So all we need to do now, because remember we're still in the workshop, if you find the Done button at the top, if you click on that, you take it out of the workshop and put it into the showroom, your completed masterpiece. There you go. There's your ROI dashboard. One other thing, because I'm very conscious of the time, I did promise you that if this is a favorite dashboard, it's something you'd like to see again and again and again, it can be added to your homepage. So if you click on your homepage for a second, you can see here, this is what I mean by the homepage. Now, at the moment, doesn't seem to be any space there for any dashboard, but we can make space by going in and editing what we call the homepage layout. Now, this particular task would need to be completed by a system admin. If you don't have admin rights, it's unlikely that you'd be able to do this, but we can quickly do it. If you click on the Setup menu that you see at the top of the screen, down the left-hand side, it opens up our Setup menu. And under App Setup, as Chris is highlighting here, you can see an option there for Customize. Click on the cross next to Customize and find the Home option. Click on the cross in front of that, and it gives you the further options. Those little crosses allow you to drill down into the options. Now, there's one there called Homepage Layout, so if you click on that, it actually allows you to see any homepage layouts that you have. So you could potentially have multiple homepage layouts for different users who need to see different things on the homepage. We've only got one, so let's click on the Edit link in front of it. And as you can see, it's all really just a lot of tick boxes. What do you want to see on your homepage? What don't you want to see? And in the top section there's one called Dashboard Snapshot. If you click, or if you check that box, click Next. On the next screen, it just allows you to decide where you want that to appear on your homepage, at the top, in the middle, at the bottom. So on the on the right-hand side, get it right, you can see Dashboard Snapshot has been added there. Select it, click on it to select it, and just click the top button, and we'll push it up to the top. If you now go and click on Save, that saves your changes. Go to the Home tab, and there you can see there is my dashboard sitting on my Home tab. Individual users can choose which dashboard they see. I won't change it now, but just to point it out to you, can you see there's a customized page link in the top right-hand corner of the dashboard component? Customized page. There you go. And an individual user is able to choose which of their favorite dashboards they want to be displayed on the home page. So it's not up to you, it's up to them ultimately. You just have to make sure it's available to them on there. Did that work out okay? Okay. So I'm very conscious of the time, but I've got one more little exercise that I want to go through with you, and then we'll need to think about wrapping things up. So if we can go on to the next exercise. Now, we've had a look at creating a dashboard from scratch, which obviously it takes time. You've got to think about it. You've got to create the source reports. So there's a lot of work to be done. Let's be realistic. However, are you aware that you can go and download ready-made dashboards which include all of the necessary reports and so on? Now, I'm not going to take you in there now, but just to make you aware that of where you can go to get them, because we've already downloaded one that we're going to have a look at modifying. But if Chris, you'd like to just drop us back into the app for a second. In the top right-hand corner, can you see there's a force.com apps link? If you click on that link, that takes you into our App Exchange, which is where you can go and download our applications, either from our application partners, many of whom you'll find in the campground today. Also, you can download free applications from Salesforce Labs, one of which is a dashboard for your marketing. So if you want to do a quick search for us, Chris, type in their marketing dashboard. And again, don't worry about following along with us up here. We just want to give you a very quick idea of where you can go, without the S. Okay, and just hit find. I just want to point it out to you. So there it is, Marketing Metrics Dashboard. That's the one that we've already preloaded into your org so that we don't have to all sit here for a few minutes while it all downloads. But there's one there called Marketing Metrics Dashboards. It's a free one, and that essentially includes dashboards with components and all of the underlying source reports. Now, here's a question for you. What are the chances of that downloaded dashboard being exactly to your requirements? Pretty slim, because there are going to be things that you'll want to change. But the good news is, over the last 40 minutes or so, everything that we've been doing creating a dashboard can be used to modify an existing dashboard or a downloaded dashboard. So I'm just going to leave you with just one final example before we wrap things up. If you can make your way back into the org, and just one last thing. Go to your Dashboards tab, one final time, and I'm not going to tell you why I'm going to do this, but have a look in the address bar at the top of your browser, and in there's a URL. That URL is unique to this dashboard. So can you just highlight that for me, for those of you following along, and just copy it, right-click copy or Control-C, okay? And I won't tell you why I'm doing that just for a couple of minutes, but in a second, all will become clear. Okay, so right-click and copy that. Now, that dashboard that we've pretended we've just downloaded from the App Exchange, if you, on your Dashboards tab, if you go into the View Dashboard drop-down, there we go, and it's called Campaign Metrics Dashboard. It's the middle one. That's the one that we just saw a minute ago on the App Exchange. If you select that, after a couple of seconds, there you go. There it is. That's a ready-made dashboard. Now, notice there's an edit button at the top. If you click on that, Chris, that takes you into the exact same screen where we were building our dashboard just a few minutes ago. All the same functions are here. You can go in and edit any of them. You can delete any component that you don't want. But I just want to show you one little trick. If you find the top right-hand corner component, which is Marketing Spend Optimization, a challenging spelling there, okay, and click on the edit link, and here's the little trick. You know how we said you can have up to 20 components on a dashboard? 20 components is too many. The whole point of a dashboard is, at a glance, you can see key information about your business or about your particular division, department, etc. If a user has to scroll down to see all of that information, it kind of defeats the whole purpose. So as a general rule, I think 10 is the magic number. But if you know that you need to have more than 10 components on a dashboard, this is what you can do. Create multiple dashboards. And so that you can easily get from one to another, here's a little trick. Let's imagine this is the first dashboard in a series of 2 or 3, 10 on each one. Find any component on that dashboard and go in and edit it as we've done here. And find the drill down to, you know how we said it drills us down to the source report, one click and we see the source report. But there's another option there called other URL. If you click on that, the drill down URL field underneath becomes active. And guess what we're going to paste in there? We're going to paste the URL that we just copied from the address bar a minute ago. Remember, that's the unique URL to that dashboard we created earlier on. So you can create multiple dashboards, spread your components across those multiple dashboards, and then each one is just a click away from the next one. So let's just save that now, and let's give it a go. If you click Done at the top, in the top left-hand corner, okay, just to push it back into the showroom. So I'm looking at the dashboard. I've got the information I want from dashboard number 1. Let's go and click on that one there and see where it takes us. Thinking about it. The second dashboard, or the third dashboard, or the fourth dashboard in the series. So you don't have to click through to the source report. You can click across to another dashboard. You just have to know how to do that. Okay. So I'm hoping that's the kind of thing that you might find useful. Again, I'm very conscious of the time, so I'm going to have to draw things to a close. But if you can just go back into the slides, just a quick word about what we've covered today. Just go on a couple of slides. One more. There we go. Just to let you know that the kind of stuff that we've covered over the last 45, 50 minutes is all stuff that we have included in our administrator training, various courses. And if you're working for the kind of company who might require lots of additional training, please be aware that we also have a product offering called Premier Training as well. Now, if you're interested in finding any more about our training, there's a couple of options. Waving her hand at the back there is it Brooke? It is Brooke. She's one of our salespeople for the training team, so she's more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. Additionally, we have a whole group of my colleagues out in the campground in the training and certification booth. Just look for the big signs that say success. There are a lot of them around at the moment, but you'll find them over there. So please go and talk to one of my colleagues about training, Premier Training, certification, anything like that. Now, before you head off, I've got one final favour. There's always one final favour. Before I open it up for Q&A, I'm aware that people want to get off, but if you are one of the people sitting in front of a PC, we'd be very grateful if you could provide a couple of minutes of feedback about how you found the last hour. So you'll find this. If you go to your Home tab, on your Home tab, if you find that the sidebar is not open, just click on the division that you see on the side of the site. Can you just go through opening the sidebar again a second? Because or did you close it? Yeah, it was closed. Okay. So open up the sidebar down the left-hand side. And on the sidebar, there's a link there to a course survey that Chris is highlighting for you now. If you click on that link, it will open up the survey. And the only thing you need to provide, or I can help you with, is the name of the session that you attended, Building Dashboards to Drive ROI. It will take you a couple of minutes, but I would be very, very grateful if you could take those couple of minutes to fill that in. And I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. And then what I'll do, I'll stay in this room. We've got 5 minutes left, so I'll open it up for questions if anybody has any. Okay? Or if you need to rush off, thank you very much for attending, and I hope you found it useful.